Okay. Wait for this to flip over. Come on.
With MailChimp, you can design beautiful marketing.
Hang on. Okay. There we go. There we go. You guys like the little animated GIF down in the corner there of the little Space Marine guy? Found him somewhere on the internet, literally about 3 minutes ago. I was like, I wonder if that would work. It sort of does. It's kind of cool. All right, so I should pop out the chat so I can see it easier. Get it in the right spot. Okay. Don't know why closed caption is on. I don't need that. Now I've lost my chat window. I'll be with you folks in just a second. There we go. Okay. There we go. That's good. That's good. Everything's good. And there we go. I hope you folks are doing well on this Sunday morning or afternoon or evening or Monday or whenever it is for you. I hope you're doing well in general. Let's see here. We got good morning from Cincinnati. It's a beautiful day here. Nice. It's gray and rainy all day yesterday and probably a good portion of today. Good morning from beautiful Junction City, Wisconsin. How you doing? Salt Lake City. Nice. I'll be in your airport in a little over a week for a short period of time on my way to Reno for the Game Manufacturers Association Expo trade show thing. Good morning from a dreary Portland, Maine. Painting an errant plague marine. I have to try and get my painting mojo back. I mean, starting small is always a good way to start, I think. My mail just showed up, showed me that Sarissa just announced a ruined Reichstag. I don't know who Sarissa is. Let's see here. Hello from a sorta rainy Jonesboro, Illinois. I don't know what's going on this morning. I haven't had enough coffee. That's the problem is. Wexford, Peoria, Columbus, Waukegan, Gurney area. We've got a lot of folks in the Illinois. Let's see here. Japan, that's pretty far away. Let's see here. Good morning from Rhode Island. Good morning from a pleasant Columbus, Ohio. Pleasant is nice. Taiwan, got northern Italy. Let's see, what else have we got? Washington, Ottawa. Regarding your topic, my plan is to just not play the actual game of Warhammer 40,000 or Warhammer anymore. I don't like the cycle, and I don't like how the game is updated. I mean, that's certainly a valid opinion. You know what I mean? It's I don't disagree particularly. I mean, there's several reasons why I haven't been playing like regular Warhammer, 40K or Age of Sigmar. And for me, it's because of just the army scale. I'm just not interested in army scale games anymore. But there's also, the constant churn, and that's also starting to wear on me. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Jesse, how you doing? Morning for a windy, dreary Milwaukee. It's like that up here too. MDF scenery. Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Putting together my Cursed City minis because apparently it's okay to talk about that game again. Sure. Yeah. I spent last month printing. Time to actually paint something. Morning from finally not windy Vegas. Nice. Greetings from sunny Denmark. Nice. Just down the road in Racine. Well, it's a bit of a road, but yeah, you're in the right area. All right. Let's see here. Hello from the Netherlands. It's 1:33 in the morning in Adelaide, Australia. See, so it is Monday over there. Pro JG, how you doing? Snow-covered Wyoming. That's kind of to be expected, I suppose, right? Like I said, we got a bunch of rain yesterday, but I think that it's going to start getting slightly colder again. Like sometime like midnight last night, it was like 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which we're like, well, that's weird. And then sometime later this week, like towards the end of this upcoming week, I think that we're going to have a high one day of 20. So I don't know. It's going to be weird. Slowly converting my GW group over to Battletech. Those record sheets, though. Yeah, those record sheets are it's not great. It's too many records. A viewer named Brian, I forget Brian's last name, sent me a copy of the First Strike Commander's Edition, which is a hardcover book for BattleTech, but not for regular classic BattleTech, but for First Strike, which is the easier version of BattleTech. It's still a pretty thick book with lots and lots of stuff going on. So yeah, I don't know. I've paged through it a little bit here and there. I haven't been able to like have the time to sit down and like read it. Same with Dead Zone. I have the Dead Zone. I bought the Dead Zone books, because it comes with like a rule book. It's like a soft cover, and then there's also a like a forces kind of book. And I've just been able to page through it and do a little bit of reading here and there, but not very much. So yeah, I have some BattleTech miniatures, but I don't know. One benefit is that there's no, with First Strike, you don't need the hex grid. So that's kind of nice. I do like that. I kind of don't like hex grids. I mean, I like the shape. It's cool shape, you know. You can see it. Whoops, over there. My camera screen is mirrored properly, so it's like a mirror, and you're used to looking into a mirror, but the screen here is down on is not. So I always get confused. Heading to the Peoria Comic Con this morning to meet Sam Jones, Flash Gordon. Oh, that's cool. Good morning from Amarillo, Texas. We're getting freezing rain this morning. That's not so good in Texas, right? Yeah. Getting ready for Adepticon. Yes, same here. I'm also looking forward to Adepticon. I actually was working on a piece of terrain yesterday that I'm going to be having at Adepticon when we do the, we're going to do some demos on Friday night of Rain and Hell. So I want to have 2 boards kind of ready to go. And so I was working on some terrain yesterday. If you follow me on Twitter, you saw all the clamps. Excuse me. I got to try to clear my throat here a little bit. Okay. Anyway, yeah, it's a piece of bones, like Reaper bones terrain, but it was very wavy out of the package, and I was like, all right. So I had to put JB Weld epoxy on the underside of it and glue it to a piece of MDF to make a base for it, and then I just had to cover it in clamps and hope that it worked. And so far, so good. I'll check again this morning to see how it goes, but I'm going to be priming it today. Not with a rattle can, because you don't prime bones with a rattle can, because then it will never, ever, ever get dry. DJ Todd P. Harris, how you doing? Focused on skirmish type gaming, mainly one-page rules. Got tired of buying codices or codices. Anyway, every 2 years, 2 to 3 years. Yep, nope, I totally understand what you're saying too. My Gaslands group is too lazy and cheap for the effort 40K requires. Well, there's a benefit to that there then too, isn't there? Yeah. Let's see here. I finally cleared my shelf of shame down to 4 models, which are duplicates. Kind of torn on painting them. Well, gosh, yeah, I mean, that's a lot. Uncle Adam, I love your videos and I look forward to them every week. My job kind of sucks right now, but listening to your streams makes everything a little better. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that it helps. And hopefully things get better soon. You know, everybody's got things they're going through, but I hope that I'll keep making the videos. So I hope that helps. But thanks for letting me know. Hello from Lincolnshire. About to paint an Underworlds band for a friend of mine as a gift. Well, that's very nice. Morning from the very windy Mitten. Yes, lower Michigan. It's yeah, it's been windy here too. VJ Morph, how you doing? Just checking in from work. Mardi Gras weekend here, so 10-hour Sunday night gig. Well, I mean, howdy, happy Mardi Gras, and glad to hear you're working. Definitely, and thanks for checking in. Absolutely, VJ Morph, all the way from over in the Australia. It's not called the Australia, you know what I'm saying. Looking forward to that Alpha Strike book when it comes back into print. Well, Brian sent it to me because he found it on sale or something. I should go back and check the message that he sent. But yeah, it was that was very nice. Hello from Germany. Today I'll be listening and working through my backlog, working on some Terminators. Nice. Woo Adepticon. Woo Adepticon indeed. I'm very, very much looking forward to it. Absolutely. The clunk of BattleTech is a nice switch from Gaslands once in a while. The record sheets aren't that bad. They just play in a well-lighted setting and bring a lot of pencils, lots of pencils. Just, you know, unless you're using the dry erase markers, but, you know. But yeah, definitely. I miss when GW was bright and silly before it got all grimdark. I don't know. I don't mind the grimdark aesthetic. I sometimes think that the grimdark aesthetic gets taken too seriously. The grimdark aesthetic, in my opinion, can be very you can definitely go grungy and dark with the right kind of like understanding that this is, I mean, for lack of a better word, satire, but you know what I'm saying? Like when you go real grungy on purpose, sometimes some people take this as like seriously and this is a way to live, and other people take it like as like, oh, this is over the top. You know what I mean? And I like the over the top version better a little bit sometimes. So yeah. A lot of fun last night. Viking shenanigans. Indeed. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Last night I streamed Valheim on Twitch from about 8 p.m. Central to about midnight. And Valheim is this kind of survival PC game where you're a Viking, you've died, and now you're in Valheim, which is kind of a purgatory between there and Valhalla, I guess. And, you know, you start out and it's like a survival game. So you got to build a house and figure out where to find food, and you know, kill a bunch of goblins. And there's an overall storyline where there's these 5 different kind of boss monsters that you have to be able to take out so that you can go on to Valhalla. But, you know, you start out and you have literally like wooden tools, and you have to work your way up until you get to like better metal stuff and then fancy stuff and blah, blah. And because you level a little bit, but it's really more about your equipment kind of, but it's fun. Let's see here. How does paint interact with JB Weld? Well, that's a good question. I have no idea. I put the JB Weld was on the underside of this piece of terrain, and then I glued it to a piece of MDF. So there shouldn't be any point where JB Weld gets paint on it by the time that yeah. So it's actually gluing the thing to something else. But I did not glue JB Weld to paint on it. I would have not done that. That's not a good idea probably. But yeah. Glad I caught a live chat. Well, absolutely. How you doing? Love the show. What do you think about Games Workshop resin printing and then shaving other people for doing the same thing? Resin printing and then shaving other people. I don't know what you mean by that. Unless it's shaming. I mean, it's their company and they can do what they want. I don't know that it's necessarily something you have to agree with, admittedly. And if I know what you're talking about, is I think that some of the prototype imagery that they show for models, people are like, that's obviously 3D printed with a resin printer. You can see the little tiny lines. But that's just the way business works. They need to get, especially nowadays, because lead times have to be so huge that they, I'm sure, are having to print out a 3D model and then paint on that to get product art, and then wait for production and wait for production and wait for production. If they waited for final production with an actual plastic model and painted that, they'd be way far behind. And as far as them saying, hey, don't 3D print stuff and bring it to our tournaments, if that's not a thing that you agree with, then don't go to their tournaments. That's just kind of the way it works. I like 3D printing, don't get me wrong. Eventually I'm going to do it myself, but instead I either, pay people to do it for me or buy stuff off of Etsy that's 3D printed. But I enjoy painting 3D printed models, and I don't have any problem with it, but they do, and it's their ball, and they can take it and do with it as they will. There's a lot of things that big corporations do that are annoying and stupid, and that's just the way big corporations work. It shouldn't be, but it is. So, yeah, I don't know that it's a hypocrisy thing at all, other than it just being general big billion-dollar corporation hypocrisy, which is kind of at a standard level. Sometimes it goes higher. It never seems to go lower. So there's that too. Now, if they're actually shaving other people, then I haven't heard of, but that sounds dangerous. Hello from Ireland, painting some green Nighthaunt test models. Nice. Waffles or pancakes? I've not had either in over 15 years. So there's that. Let's see here. Orcs used to be hilarious. Yes. Honestly, I know a lot of people complained about the Cruel Boys because they're like, oh, they're not comic relief anymore. They're not as silly and and whatnot, and all that. I frankly, the orcs have never, like, as a comic relief thing, have never tripped my trigger. I don't know. I've just never been into that so much. Actually, the new Cruel Boys, I like those because they look a little bit more, I hate to say realistic because it doesn't, they're orcs, but you know what I mean? They seem a little bit more realistic, at least in my mind. They're not so cartoony. I don't know, but that's a personal preference. I'd love an old school white dwarf covering all games. I can dream. Yeah, nobody wants magazines too much these days, as it turns out. There are some magazines out there that are trying to cover all games, but it's a much more of a digital world these days. You know what I mean? Reaper bones are not fond of rattlecan primers. Any idea why? I have to assume it's something to do with the type of plastic and probably the propellant in the rattlecan. If you spray airbrush primer onto Reaper bones, or you brush it on even, no problem. Not a problem at all. It'll dry. It's fine. If you put a rattle can on there, I had a piece of terrain, I don't know, last year that I just sprayed with a rattle can because I almost always prime, terrain with a rattle can because it sticks a little bit better, and terrain takes a bit more damage than your normal, then you're more careful with your people than you are with your terrain. And it, like 2 months later, and it was still tacky to the touch. And I'm like, and then I started talking to people and they're like, oh yeah, Bones does that. And I'm like, even the terrain? And they're like, yeah. So, long story short, as I talked to Vince and Sam, Vince Venturella here on YouTube, and Sam also here on YouTube, but also actually they're both on Patreon now. Anyway, they both suggested I just put matte varnish over it. And so I sprayed it with multiple levels of matte varnish out of my airbrush. And then eventually I actually just brushed it on, and then that finally did the job. And then I could actually paint the model. Yeah, it was not ideal, but it is what it is. So yeah, like I said, I have a suspicion it's some sort of chemical reaction between the plastic, the specific type of slightly bendy plastic, and the propellant, I think, in the rattle can, but I don't know that for sure. I would assume JB Weld would be fine with most paints. I've seen people repair tractors with it and paint it with lacquers and other automotive grade paints. I mean, that's possible, yeah. Infinity models are definitely more realistically proportioned, 7 heads tall rather than 6, which is the normal GW scaling. Yeah. Good morning from the Bluegrass State. How you doing? Made my pre-order yesterday for Curse City. Excited. Glad GW is actually making a production rerun. Yeah, I agree. Moderator Matthew Sears. How you doing? Ethan says, I got my first airbrush yesterday. Thanks for your videos on them. Gave me the confidence to finally try. Now I just have to figure out how much paint to put in there. That's always kind of a thing. There are times when I'm like, well, if I can give you any kind of piece of advice, put in a little bit less paint than you think you might. And then if you have to add a little bit more to finish the model, great. But if you put in too much paint and then you spray the model and then you're like, well, now I have all this extra paint. You can sometimes pour it back into the bottle if it's that type of bottle. If it's a little squeezy dropper bottle, it's real hard to get it back in that little tiny hole. Although sometimes dropper bottles, you can remove the nozzle part and then it's a little bit easier, but it's still kind of hard. 3D printing is a curse. The number of amazing models increases exponentially daily. I don't see it as a curse. I see that as tons of awesome choices to be able to make. But if you try to buy them all, then yeah, that would be problematic. And print them all, even worse. I missed the GW shaming. I don't know about shaming. Like I said, they don't want you to 3D print stuff for your models that you bring to their tournaments and such, which I get, sure. They also don't like it if you use kit bash stuff that's not their stuff. I mean, it's, that's just the way it works. It's their company and they can make the rules the way that they want to. They do sell models, so it makes sense. Now, the fact that they haven't put some sort of invisible yet still fluorescent marker into their paints and then taking a black light over your stuff and going, these weren't painted with GW paints, you can't be in the tournament yet, that sounds like science fiction. It wouldn't surprise me. If they did that, they're like, no, the models have to be painted with our paints. Then I could see that happening. I don't know that it will, but it wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't go, well, that's amazing. I'd be like, oh yeah. But I don't know. I do use their washes and their contrast paints all the time, all the time. I like Cruel Boys, but I wish they still had vanilla orcs. I mean, they still do, don't they? Don't they still make Iron Jaws and Savage Orcs, those are still like regular kind of big, thick-necked, giant, orc type dudes. They still make those, I'm pretty sure, don't they? I miss Gretchen. I knew a girl named Gretchen. I've known actually several women named Gretchen. Anyway, not quite the same spelling, certainly. No 3D printed stuff at tournaments unless you prove you modeled it yourself. Oh, well, see, that's even, well, huh. That's interesting. I don't know how you would prove that. I suppose you bring your laptop and then go, hey, look, I don't know. That's a good question. I have not heard that part. I just heard the no 3D printed stuff or something like that. Any near future plans or development things in the works for Reign in Hell expansions and or additions? No. We're working on our next game, which will be coming out this summer, and it'll be a different game. It'll be sci-fi. It will be a different engine, if you will, like a different game system, that kind of thing. We're not looking to do the kind of what's become standard where you make a game and then you just keep making expansion after expansion after expansion after expansion for it, and then make a new edition and then expansion and expansion. There's nothing, I guess, wrong with that, but there's no reason for us. The thing is that we're interested in making lots of different types of games for lots of different types of gamers. And also, we don't want to just work on one IP forever because we would get bored, I think. So, yeah, we made Reign in Hell. We did make one expansion for Reign in Hell, but that was mainly just because a lot of people kept saying, hey, what about solo and co-op? And we were like, yeah, we should have put that in originally in the game. So we made the expansion, which was a pay what you want PDF. So if you want to give us some dollars, great. If you just want to download it for free, also great. And then our next game, because we're adding solo and co-op into it right from the jump, probably we won't make an expansion for the next one. We'll put out an FAQ and answer questions and stuff like that and whatever. But we want our games to be kind of smaller. It's like, I don't know. We just want people to use the models that they have or that they have always wanted to try out. That's why it's model agnostic. And then you sit down and you play the game the way that you want to play it. And it's not, we don't want to make a game that becomes somebody's personality. You know what I mean? There's like a lot of folks out there that are like, I only play this one game. That's my game. And I don't personally agree with that. You do what you want, but I like the fact that we make games and we're going to keep making a game a year and make them all different from each other. Different themes, different, they'll all be miniature games, but they're going to have different, rule sets and some, maybe we'll make one game that's not, I don't want to say competitive, but it's definitely much more adversarial. But Reign in Hell kind of tells a story to a degree because you've got this cabal of demons that kind of gets better and better and better and gets different titles and sometimes they die and things like that. Like that kind of narrative campaign style play is really interesting and it's very cool, but it's also nice to be able to just be like, well, it's how about you and me fight? You know what I mean? So there's that too. And you can do that with Reign in Hell. We're gonna be able to do it with the next game. Maybe at some point we'll make a game that's just about, like, I don't want to say competitive because I don't ever want to see tournaments for any of our games, frankly, but it's possible that we'll make something maybe a little bit more adversarial, but we always have an adversarial mode in the game. Even in the next game coming out this upcoming summer, it's going to have, like, it's focused a bit more on solo and co-op, but it still has a full ability if you just want to, play against your friend and not with your friend. Nova Open question. Is it worth it for a hobby novice? Been in for less than a year. Really enjoy the hobby side, but I'm yet to play any games. Down to watch people play, but it would be cool to demo some games, learn the games I'm interested in, take some hobby classes. I would say that Nova has got a lot more hobby classes than LVO, at least last time that I was at LVO. I did not go this year, but I did go in 2020, which was the last one they had before. They didn't have one in 2021. For Las Vegas Open. So Las Vegas Open, in comparison to, say, Nova's definitely got a much more of a hobby track to it. There's a lot more hobby teachers there and that kind of stuff. So that's a benefit. Watching games and things like that, also cool. There are demos, maybe not necessarily. I would say that there's maybe, honestly, both of those conventions are not super demo heavy. LVO is very tournament oriented. But there are some demos that happen at LVO. And I'm sure that there are also some demos I know that there are some demos that happen as well at Nova, but maybe not, still both of them are very, very tournament heavy. I would say that LVO is more tournament heavy. So there's that. Good morning from Central Florida. Just completed my first week at a new job, and I'm celebrating by getting into Malifaux. Nice. Playing my first game of Star Wars Legion today. Used your Stormtrooper video to power through a bunch of clones in a short time. Nice. Yeah, that's. I just think that the technique works pretty well, unless you want like absolute super polished, shiny, like walking around the Death Star type of Space Marines, Stormtroopers. I always get those two mixed up. But if you want like Stormtroopers that look like they've been in a bit of a scrap, then and a little that technique I think works great. Just curious if you or anyone else in here has ever had an issue with Agrax Earthshade drying cloudy. I shake it lots and apply it thin, still dries cloudy. No. I wonder if you got something in there or if you got a bad batch. I've never had it dry cloudy. It depends, I guess, maybe also what you're putting it on top of. That's a good question. I've never had it do that though. No. I think even they recognize that would be a bridge too far. I mean, they probably do, talking about the fluorescent markers in the paint to make sure you're using the right paints. But still, never. It would not surprise me. I wouldn't go, oh my. I would not clutch my pearls and say, oh, my stars and garters. I'd be like, oh yeah, that tracks. Mutant rabbit with machine guns. I don't know what that relates to. Sounds cool though. Just finalized varnishing my 30 Genestealer cultist with a brush. Never doing that again. Took ages. Yeah, varnish with a brush can take ages. That's true. I'm painting some Nighthaunt test models, and I'm not too sure on how to get that cool ghostly effect on the robes. Does anyone know good ways to do it? It depends on what kind of cool ghostly effect you're looking for. If you're looking for like a lighter like edge highlight to the edges of the robes and things like that, I would tell you to get yourself a cheap makeup brush. Go to your dollar store, or go to your drug store, or go to, department store, any place that starts with a D, and then get yourself some cheap, like $1, $2, maybe $3 makeup brushes. They will be very soft, so they will make a nice kind of gradient with your paint, and then just start practicing dry brushing. Like I did my Night Haunts. I sprayed them all with like a metallic paint from Turbo Dork, which has this color. It's like a real super dark purple, and when you catch it in the light, it gets a little kind of different color and stuff like that. It's cool. But then I used a white and just dry brushed up, like the Night Haunts have got like all those little dangly kind of floaty bits. I would dry brush the tips of those and sort of work up a little bit and then try to make a gradient that way, and it turned out pretty decent. I should make a video eventually about painting Night Haunts. Let's see here. It's a nice thing about being a display painter. I can do whatever I like. I never have to worry about breaking any tournament rules. That's true. Would you consider some kind of web presence where folks could post scenarios for Rain and Hell and the unnamed sci-fi game? I mean, there's a subreddit for Rain and Hell, so that would be something. If you wanted to just post a scenario idea up there, that's probably not a bad place if you use Reddit. And otherwise, there's a couple of Facebook groups for Rain and Hell as well, so that's something to look at. Are you planning to make a post-apocalyptic theme game? I think that would be cool. We talked about, Vince and I have talked about doing a weekend a weekend game design jam where we would start on Friday night and we would stream, not the entire time, but we would have long streams during Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday where we would work on a game like super, super short, like 16 pages, like a little booklet. Like here I have, this is Brutal Quest from Mammoth Miniatures, same guy who makes Planet 28. This doesn't have page numbers, so I don't know how many pages it is, but it's not that very many pages. It's very thin, so we're thinking like 16 pages. And if we did that, we would probably make that one post-apocalyptic. And the only reason is because like the concept is to make the entire game over the course of just those 2.5 days and then publish it Monday morning. But instead of just starting completely from scratch, we would at least have an idea of where we were going, and also potentially, as part of that, be able to find a little bit of like art that we could find. And places like Drive-Thru RPG, Wargame Vault, things like that, have art assets that you can buy that have probably been used in other games, but now are released and can be sold again by the artist. And then it's easier sometimes to find post-apocalyptic stuff or fantasy stuff that kind of looks decent. Whereas some of the stuff, like for sci-fi, just in my mind doesn't look that great or whatever. So, and sci-fi can be like, post-apocalyptic is very specific, but you know, whereas sci-fi can be very, very broad. So I don't know. Long story short is that kind of, yeah, we want to do that. Maybe we'll do it this fall after the release of our upcoming game. We were thinking about doing it last fall, but then we worked on the expansion for Rain in Hell, and so then we didn't do that. So we'll see, I guess, is the answer. But if we do a post-apocalyptic skirmishy game, it'd be real small. Probably might not have solo and co-op. I don't know. It's going to be hard to put solo and co-op into a 16-page little booklet. You know what I mean? But that's kind of our goal to some degree. Just wondering, since you did a review of Speed Paint, what you think with the issue of reactivation. I noticed it in my painting when I was painting the Lizard Man. I was painting his spines, the little, dorsal, whatever, the little spikes coming out of his spine. And I was painting them, after painting him blue with the Speed Paint, I then started painting those spines in ivory color with just a normal opaque paint. And I noticed on one of the spines as I was doing it, the ivory started to get blue tinged. Now, if you go back and watch that video, I don't remember if I mentioned it. I think I did, but I basically, my assumption was that I had just not let it dry enough, because I was trying to paint very quickly because I was trying to get it all done for this video. So I generally let paint sit a little bit longer, sometimes in between layers, depending on what it is. But I just then threw a second coat over it after the opaque paint had dried, and then it was not a problem. Now, I don't know. I also put a bunch of Agrex Earthshade wash over some of the speed paints on top of the Tyrannid Broodlord. He's got that big purple kind of carapace on the top. If you go back and check out that video, I threw a bunch of Agrex Earthshade in between, like there's the parts that stick up in the lower parts. I put a bunch of Agrex in there, and I didn't see any kind of reactivation or screw up or whatever, anything like that. So, I mean, I've been hearing that it happens, and I've noticed it happened, although I originally just chalked it up to not letting the paint dry long enough. Speed paints do take longer to dry in general, it seems, than contrast, but that's, I think, part of their thing. It's one of those situations that, once you figure it out, you just work around it. It's not that big of a deal. Honestly, for me, and this is terrible, honestly, for me, the biggest issue with speed paints is that they're in dropper bottles. So when it comes down to me, like working on a model, and I've got my brush in my hand and my model in the other hand, and now I need to put some red on them, and I want it to be kind of a transparent red, am I going to reach for speed paint blood red, which I'm going to have to unscrew the cap, and I'm going to have to find something to put the little blood red into, like a little cup or something, and then blurp, 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 and put it on the model, or just poke into the, just pop the top on the Blood Angels Red contrast from Games Workshop and just use that directly out. That's just a laziness thing on my part. There are certain colors that I'm like, well, I'm going to use the speed paint on that. And I have been doing it on and off, but very frequently I find myself, well, should I use Pallid Bone or should I use Skeleton Horde? And it's, unless I need that specific color, because Pallid Bone is a little bit different than Skeleton Horde, then I'm going to use Skeleton Horde because it's a pop top. I don't like those types of pop top, pots for regular opaque paints, but for washes and for contrast style paints like that, those transparent things, they're ideal. So that's my opinion, though. Going back to the Nova question, what are your top convention recommendations for people who are more excited for demos, hobby, casual play than competitive play? I would probably say Adepticon. There's a lot more demos going on at Adepticon than there is at either of the other two conventions, Nova or LVO. Like LVO has a 40K tournament. I think it's the biggest. It's the biggest in the country, if not the world. I don't know about this year, but like 2020, the last time they did it before COVID, I think it maxed out at 840 or 850 players, something crazy huge like that. When you think about, you have to have a table for every two of those folks. That's a lot of tables. It's massive. Last I knew, Adepticon maxes out their 40K championship tournament at 256 players. So if you don't make it into that 256, then they're not going to go to 800 because they've got other stuff to do. So though there are tons and tons of tournaments at Adepticon, I feel like Adepticon is less tournament heavy because of all the hobby stuff that's going on. It's got the most hobby stuff of any other, convention like that, classes and things you can take. And also it's got a lot of demos as well. So yeah, I would say Adepticon's the one. Hello from Maryland. Recently found your channel. I've been binging it for painting advice. But I've played a GW game. Is the Kill Team Nachmund box gonna be enough to get started? I don't know. Maybe? I actually don't know what the rules are in that box. I know who the two forces are. I've seen some of the terrain, but I'm assuming there's going to be a book in there to help get you started so you can at least play with those two forces in there. But the core book specifically, which is like useful for any kind of kill team or whatever, I guess that's $50. But I don't think you're getting a core book in the Nachmund book. I think you're getting a book kind of like you did with Chalnath, which was the one before, where it's like, yeah, this has got core rules in it, but it's not the core rule book. Why they're doing that, I don't know, but it's what they're doing. So yeah. But in theory, I think Nachmund. I would double check, go and I would look, when it's time for it to be released and stuff, make sure that it's got, but I don't know that for sure. I haven't been paying super close attention, as I will be honest with you. Love the look of the models, but I can't tell if I would need to buy books to go with it. In theory, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think that they would sell you this box and then be like, oh, but you have to go buy this other book now to make it work. But, who's to say? Recently discovered one-page rules Grimdark Future, and I'm absolutely loving it. Gave up on 40K 7 years ago, and Grimdark Future has been a wonderful excuse to dust off my 40K armies and get playing again. Yeah, it's from everything I hear, it's pretty cool if you're into army games. I want to try out Grimdark rules. Grimdark Future Firefight, I think is what it's called, which is more the like kill teamy sort of skirmish version of the Grimdark Future stuff. So I want to get into that. I want to try that out. I have the book. I just need to get some models together and someone to play with and to give it a good try. I've messed around with it a little bit myself, just like, oh, this is how these things move, and this is the play order, and this is how you shoot. But I'd like to play against a person. That always helps, I think. Do you think you'll reconsider Kill Team one day now that they have teams with specialists and more individualized characters with more kit bash and conversion potential? I'd have to buy all that stuff to make it work. I mean, like, sure, there's new teams, but I'd have to buy, at this point, 4 copies of White Dwarf to be able to get all those teams if I was interested in going down that road. And there's a bunch of teams they haven't released yet, and there's just like, I've said this a bunch of times, the Octarius box, once I get the orcs finished in there, the orc commandos, that will be a fun standalone box to just play those two forces against each other. I'll go through the rules booklet and I'll write little numbers next to all the measurement symbols because those measurement symbols are stupid. Yeah, and then that's at least, it's a decent game because it's based off of Warcry. Like, it's based off the Warcry rules. So they've just added stuff to it. So yeah, I mean, that's fine, but I don't want to play that type of game where I have to like constantly, I got to buy another box coming out if I want to get the rules for these guys. And I got to buy, like, if I wanted to play Chaos right now, I'd have to either use the rules that are in the compendium, which are garbage, the army lists, or buy the Chalnath box, even if I've already got models ready to go, just to get the stats to be able to play the Chaos Marines I already have. Do you see where that doesn't make any sense to me? Not Chalnath, sorry, Nachmund or whatever. So they're basically hiding the better rules lists away either in White Dwarf or in extra boxes that you have to buy, and that just doesn't. I'm not interested in it. Gold paint. I like Rich Gold by Monument Paints, the Proacryl line of paints that they do. Rich Gold is, I think, spectacular. How about a pre-apocalyptic game? Army Painter is recommending a varnish if you intends to overpaint, or just being careful, I suppose, a little bit too. But yeah, varnish is probably not a terrible idea. I mean, if you are going to just dry brush over the top of it, won't be a problem. And honestly, you know, so when I'm using a contrast, more often than not, or a speed paint in this situation, the only things I'm doing on top of it usually are either dry brushing or using some washes to darken up some shadows even a little bit more. I'm not usually doing much else, and neither of those things really seems to have a huge problem. So, you know. Greetings from Denver, Martin. Well, how you doing? I may pick up some speed paints, but I don't really understand the urge to switch entirely. Just pick stuff which you like, I think. I mean, one of the benefits, if you've already got all the contrast paints, then switching to speed paints seems a little silly, in my opinion. Now, picking some of the speed paints because they're like some of the colors you have, but they are technically different. None of the colors are direct matches. And that's cool because then that means you get more colors to choose from. So you have Pallid Bone and you have Skeleton Horde, and they're not the same color. If they were exactly the same color, I'd be like, well, that's kind of a bummer, isn't it? You know, but now I have two colors that are slightly different from each other, which gives me a little bit more of a palette, which I like. But yeah, switching, like throwing all your contrast in the garbage and switching to something else seems like a waste of paint. So yeah, but now if you run out of this color and you want to buy a color that's kind of like it over in, you know, Army Painter land and save yourself nearly half as far as that's concerned, because you're looking at $4 a bottle versus nearly $8 a bottle for the same size bottle. Well, then that makes sense. That's just economics. But you know, it depends. Hello from Newfoundland. Just wondering if you have any tips for oil washes. I've never used oil washes, so I probably don't. I've used enamel washes a little bit, and I love using them. They're great. But I just kind of spray the entire model till it turns brown, and then I wait like 3 to 4 minutes, and then I wipe it away with an old piece of t-shirt, and that actually works great. And then you can go back in with a brush or one of those fancy like Q-tips made for electronics. They're like bullet shaped in the end, really super finely wound. You can use those in a little bit of mineral spirits if there's certain areas you want to be very clean. But yeah, that works great. As far as oil though, I've never used oil. So, I mean, I've painted with oil paints back in college on canvas, or no, high school. High school I did that. In college, I only painted acrylics on canvas. There is an expansion to Rain in Hell, indeed. If you go to raininhellgame.com, there's links there. They'll take you to where the expansion is. It's over on Wargame Vault. But if you go there, you can click on that, and it will take you exactly to the right page. You won't have to search for it. So yeah, raininhellgame.com. Or just go to snarlingbadger.com and then follow the link. You know, it's easy. It came out back in late September. It's called the Oculus Spear, and it's a solo and co-op expansion, so you can play by yourself or play with a friend against monsters and such. And it is a 6-part, it's a 6-scenario kind of story. You play them in order. You don't just like roll and go, oh, let's play scenario number 4. You do number 1 and then number 2 and number 3 and number 4 and etc. To give Army Painter its due, they've always said that it's one coat painting. A lot of people have just assumed that they can be used the same as contrast paints. Yeah, I could see that. Makes sense about what you're saying about speed paints and dropper bottles. I saved my pots when transferring to droppers. I'll be doing the reverse with speed paints. Yeah, I kind of wish that I mean, I did never transfer over to droppers from, like, I never took my GW paints and put them in droppers. I just, eventually all my GW paints dried up and then I just replaced them. But I do have, as far as opaques are concerned, I have a couple colors here and there that I still like. But if you watched the stream on Friday, my Kislev flesh completely dried up for the most part, so that's no good. Anyway, but yeah, if I had a bunch of those pots, then I could just, or I wonder if I could, because I can buy the bottles that you get. That still doesn't help. No. Anyway, yeah, I'll figure it out someday. But at this point, not so much. Let's see here. I'll have to go to Adepticon next year. I missed the opportunity to register. It's a very great convention. It's my favorite. even more so than Gen Con, which is massive, you know, well, 2019, before the pandemic, that year they had 72,000 people at that convention. And it's not just miniatures. It's miniatures is actually the smallest of all the things in there. It's board games, it's RPGs, it's, you know, collectible card games, it's all that stuff. It's all tabletop stuff. Have you considered doing more reviews? Your recent reviews have been super helpful. I do want to do a series coming up soon where I kind of do, like, not like in a row, but I mean, I want to start a new, you know, you got your regular Friday shows, right, that I do, that don't have like a title. I mean, they have a title for that particular subject, but they're just tabletop minions. But then I also have Uncle Adam's Pro Tips, which happen once in a while. And I've had other little shows in here that have, you know, popped up once in a while on a Friday or whatever. I do have an idea for another one that I want to do that's kind of a review show, sorta, where I just talk about a thing. That being said, I appreciate that they're helpful. People don't watch them, as it turns out. If you look at Friday's video about the 5 different skirmish bags that I talk about in that, it's got like 11,000 views at this point, which normally by Sunday I'm a good deal further ahead than that. So there's always that to consider as well. Sometimes videos don't have velocity, meaning they don't get a lot of views right away, but they have a long tail that goes for a long while. When Sam was coming on the channel and painting on the channel from time to time, which I think we should get started again a little bit, to, you know, just get people seeing Sam again. But those would have not very good velocity. They wouldn't, like, right off the bat. Like when he was like, oh, is this how you paint a power sword, right? People would look at that video and go, well, I'm not painting a power sword right now, so I don't need to know that. You know, not everybody, but some people would. But then later on, when you were like, how do I paint a power sword? And you type that into YouTube or even Google, then you find that video. So it gets a lot of views in the long term, but right off the bat, it doesn't necessarily get them. Whereas videos where I talk about, like, how to stay motivated, how to do this, you know, that, whatever, those kind of things that are not necessarily straight up tutorials, people will like, well, I'll watch that because that's, you know, it's interesting. It's interesting the way that different videos kind of either have a big lead and then drop off, or kind of, you know, I've been doing it long enough that I can look at a video eventually and go, well, this is maybe not necessarily the thing to do for the channel, but doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. I mean, if I was only really looking at views, my videos would be very different. So there's that too. Let's see here. You should check out Wonderfest in Louisville, Kentucky sometime. It's a hobby convention with a huge building and painting competition and a very big vendor's floor. I've seen Reaper there before. That's kind of cool. The convention I'm going to, well, it's not a convention, it's a trade show. The trade show I'm going to, not next week, but the week after, in Reno, Nevada, the Game Manufacturers Association Expo, Gamma Expo. I believe the 2023 Expo is moving to Lexington. I swear I read that someplace. They've been in Reno for quite some time, but I believe it's moving to Lexington. First of all, Reno is really hard to get to. To get from Wisconsin to Reno, it's going to be 4 plane rides. It's ridiculous. And it's also real expensive. I don't know why flying into Reno is so really expensive, but it's really expensive. So anyway, Lexington is the next, is from what I understand, not this year, but next year. So in theory, I'll be in Lexington for that. We'll see how it goes. OPR has a fantastic Warband army builder for Grimdark Future Firefighter on their website. I think you'd love it. It's so much fun to use, and the output is spectacular. I think that it's only if you are a what do you call it? Patreon person, which I am. I'm a tier 1 Patreon person. But I get constant messages about like, hey, free stuff for tier 2 people, like all the time. I need to go into my settings and at least get rid of Discord, because I get Discord messages constantly from that, which is, you know, a thing. But anyway, like if you want to build your own complete army lists, that I know is on Patreon. The army builder, if you're going to use basically Games Workshop models to play OPR, that I think might only be on their website and not on Patreon. But if you wanted to be like, I've just got a bunch of cool models that are not Games Workshop models, and I want to make lists for them, you know, actual army books, that software or whatever, I think, is just available through Patreon. But I could be wrong. I often get a model to a certain stage and then varnish before finishing overall, and then again when finished. Yeah, I mean, if you're getting real fancy with your modeling, then definitely you will see people, especially if you're doing like oil washes and stuff like that. Very frequently, people will varnish the model and then do the oil wash because the oil wash can mess with some of the other colors underneath, so you got to varnish over that. Or you're doing a gloss varnish because you want the oil to run a lot easier and it works better on a glossy surface, and moves in the little, what do you call it, the whatever that, when it goes down the channels and the panel lines and all that stuff. It's a term I can't think of off the top of my head right now. Anyway, my point is that for people who are a little bit fancier about painting, multiple layers of varnish at different steps is nothing new. But when you're like trying to speed paint, I think that there's some folks that are like, well, wait, but if you're trying to speed paint, then maybe doing a bunch of extra steps over the top of your contrast is not necessarily the thing that you should be doing. It depends on what you're looking at. Finally got confirmation my D12s from China are arriving, so I can finally play Oculus Spear. I've only been waiting 2 months after accidentally buying D10s. Oh, that's a bummer. Yeah, I've just bought mine from like Amazon. I just bought some purple ones recently, actually. So yeah, I just got a bunch of D12s from Amazon, and they were pretty quick. Glass Half Dead was saying he thinks Kill Team Compendium teams are good to play against each other. They just don't mix so well with the specialty teams. I mean, that is troublesome. Yeah, that shouldn't be the case. That's not the right way to do it. Especially if you're looking at any kind of tournament scene, because then everyone's just going to run the specialty teams, or else you have to have a tournament where the tournament organizer says you can only use compendium rules. The other thing is that whether they're more powerful, less powerful, whatever, they're just dull. Just like the whole concept of just like, yeah, you can have 2 different types of models in your warband, your kill team. That's it. You can have, or maybe 1 if you're playing Space Marines. So the way that you build a kill team now is you can take, let's say for Necrons, my Necron kill team used to have 4 different types of models in it. I had a couple of Immortals. I had some Warriors, just bog standard warrior dudes. I had a couple of flayed ones and a single death mark, because you want a sniper, right? So that makes sense. Well, now you can't play that way. Now you could either take Warriors and Immortals, or you could take Warriors and Warriors, or you could take Immortals and Immortals. You could take a unit of 4 death marks, which seems like way too many, and like some Immortals. But you can, or you can take some flayed ones and some Warriors or whatever, but you can't take any more than 2 different types of models. And that's across the board. Again, unless you're Space Marines, then you can take 1 type of models, 5 intercessors. There you go. There you're done. Well, what kind of weapons can I have? The ones that they standard come with. That's it. There's nothing fancy. And it's really dull, in my opinion. And most of them don't have any special abilities either. And so when you compare those to the Death Corps of Krieg, list that came in Octarius, or the Orc Commandos, or any of those other new ones where there's tons of flavor and there's medics and snipers and zealots and all kinds of different stuff, since they took specialisms away as well, kind of, mostly. It's just, yeah, I just don't like what they did with it. So are oil washes worth trying out? I don't know. That's a good question. Like I said, I've never used them. All those White Dwarf teams will probably be in the Kill Team Annual, or whatever they call their Tome of Champions. I think it's called the Kill Team Annual. I'll wait. Well, hopefully they will be. The other option is that they might not be, but they probably will be, but who's to say? Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I just don't like I said, I made a video recently about how they seem to be taking a lot of hints from the video game industry with DLC and Season Pass and stuff like that, and I'm just not interested in that right now. Hello from Wales. Recently joined your Irregulars Patreon. Well, thank you very much, Jordan. Very glad I did. Have you seen the Battle Company's book for the Middle-earth game? It's a set of rules for small skirmish games. Is it made by Games Workshop for the Middle-earth game? Oh, I have not. No. I should take a look at Battle Companies, because I like the idea of skirmish, and Middle-earth models are very cool. I just, again, the normal Middle-earth game is not like real small, but it's also not like full-blown 2,000 point army size. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of in between, which is nice. But still, I don't know anybody around here who plays it, so there's that too. But if it was like literally small little units, then maybe I could build 2 of them and then have something from there. Let's see here. I'm halfway through Oculus Spear, and it's great fun. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Absolutely. Grand Theft Auto miniature war game. That'd be a huge board. It'd be really hard to do. Let's see here. First time I actually caught one of these. Warm night in Perth, Australia. Well, welcome, Michael. Or, sorry, Matthew. Sorry. Let's see. I'd love to see your take on oil wash if you ever wanted to learn and produce a video. I just, that's not usually my thing. The stuff that I paint generally is, I'm generally trying to get stuff on tabletop fast. So I'm not as much of a display painter. And most of the folks that I see who do oil paints are heading closer into the display paint kind of category. The reason that I've used enamel washes in the past is because they're just super fast and they're actually kind of helpful for speeding things up a little bit. I don't know. I guess if I could find some like speed paint hacks for oil paint, which is frankly against oil paint, because one of the benefits to oil paint, and this I know from just working in fine art stuff in college and even in high school, the benefit of oil over acrylic is that it takes a lot longer to dry. So you can go back and blend, you can go back and rework things stay wet longer. The downside is it also stays wet longer. And if you're trying to get something done, you have to wait for it to dry sometimes until you can do the next thing without it blending. And, it's all that kind of stuff. I want to talk about reactivation. So, yeah, for me, that's one of the reasons why I haven't really looked at oils. Warcry comes with cards and all the rules right there, just so easy. If you buy one of the big starter boxes, yes. Generally, yes. So if you buy, like, let's say now it would be Red Harvest. If you could find the original Warcry box, if you're interested in playing Warcry, that original box was awesome. And I don't know why they don't keep making it. It drives me insane. Yeah, because now because here's the thing: if you buy Red Harvest, it does not technically come with the core book. There's a book in there that has core rules in it, and you can play the game, but it's not the core rule book. Why they don't just put the core rule book in every one of the box sets that they sell, I don't know, but they don't. So there you go. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, if you're looking to get into, say, Warcry right now, the easiest way is to buy Red Harvest, but it's like $210 American. Otherwise, you buy the book, which I think is about $40, the core book. And then depending on what warband you want to run, then you buy one of the 4 Grand Alliance books. So there's an Order book, there's a Chaos book. Those both cost $35. There's a Death book. And again, I don't know if these prices have gone up since the price go up, which I think is tomorrow maybe. So who knows? Those prices might go through the roof. Who knows? But they were $35, and then the Death and Destruction books are $25 because they're physically a good deal thinner. Now, if you're like, oh, I want to run a Warband of Chaos and also Death and also the Destruction, well, then you're going to need 3 books, so that's kind of a downside, but that's the way they've done it. So, yeah, you need those 2 things. Then you need a 22 by 30 board or whatever kind of space. You could buy a 22 by 30 match. There's lots of companies that are selling those now. What else? You need also some terrain and some models and some dice, because it uses regular standard dice, which is nice. I mean, not like custom weird dice with weird stuff printed on them. Gen Con is awesome, but it's almost overwhelming. It can be, yes. It's a very, very, very big place. Pre-ordered Cursed City. My wife... Whoops. Everything moved. Stupid chat window. Come on. There we go. My wife and daughter are very interested in playing. Looking forward to taking family night game to the next level. Nice. I'd love to see a video where you and Sam just sit and talk about painting and or gaming. We did a video where we talked about just brushes. We did a video where we talked about just paint. We did a video a couple weeks back where we talked about the Toma Champions and Warcry in general. We've got another video coming up actually where he and I talked about kind of beginner strategies for like building your force, your warband or whatever for Warcry and that kind of thing. And that'll be coming out probably while I'm gone in Reno. So not this week, but next week. Yeah. But yeah, I would definitely like to do more stuff with Sam. Absolutely. Any thoughts about Silver Bayonet? The book sure is pretty. I like the book a lot. Have you tried to play the game? I have not. I'm quite intrigued. Looks a little bit like old game called Flintlock, and it's skirmish. It is skirmish. Like I said, I think the book it's a gorgeous little book. I really like it. But I have not tried to play it, and I don't know that it quite. The thing is there's some other things that are kind of scratching my itch a little bit more, and I'm a little bit more interested in them thematically. Stargrave, honestly, for one, is a little bit more interesting to me right now than Silver Bayonet. I'm glad that Silver Bayonet's out there for people who are interested in it. That's the other benefit to, instead of just like, I'm going to make this one game, and then we're just going to keep making this one game over and over and over again, or maybe we make a couple different games or whatever the deal is. I love the fact that like Osprey has got just a wide variety of all kinds of crazy stuff that you know, so if you're like, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, but this is pretty cool. That's the benefit. Stargrave, I'm also really looking forward to a Forbidden Psalm is a skirmish fantasy game based off of the Morkborg RPG kind of system or something. So Morkborg is this crazy, super like black metal, you know, crazy RPG, but it has like a license, so other people can create stuff for it. People have been making Cyberborg or whatever. There's someone who's making a pirate type of game and whatever. But again, those are all RPGs. This guy named Kevin, who I think is in the UK, got the license to be able to make a miniature game based off of Morkborg, and it is called Forbidden Psalm. If you want to watch someone play Forbidden Psalm and check it out, take a look at Guerrilla Miniature Games on YouTube, Ash Barker's channel. He's done a bunch of different playthroughs on it. And it's a cool system, and I like it, and it's kind of weird. But he just recently did a Kickstarter, which just finished, and he's going to be releasing a new Forbidden Psalm game called The Last War, which is like weird, spooky, alternate World War One. And it's played like on a 2x2 board, and it's skirmish, and there's haunted tanks and sentient mustard gas clouds, and there's trench maggots and all kinds of crazy weird stuff and things like that. And so I think that's really interesting. And I backed that Kickstarter. That particular type of crowdfunding is exactly what crowdfunding is designed for, because he's like just a single guy who's making this all by himself, and he wants to be able to print it and get it out there. But the PDF should be dropping soon, so you know it'll be a while before the print stuff gets out, but the PDF will be coming out soon. So anyway, in my mind, modeling up, you know, that stuff versus Napoleonic stuff, at least at this point, is kind of more my interest area. So very frequently, it's not just the story, it's also the modeling opportunities that make me want to go one way or another. So I enjoyed the skirmish bag video. Well, thank you very much, Pin Monkey. I'm getting to work rebasing and touching up some old HeroClix Mech Warrior Max. Oh, I used to play that Mech Warrior game. Lore question. How are Ideneth Deepkin able to fight on land if they are fish elves? Magic. I have no idea, actually. I am not the lore guy. Capillary is the thing capillary action is what I was trying to remember before. Yes. No, I don't know any idea how the fish people, I don't know how the wet elves can make it up on land. Is Rain in Hell on Battlescribe yet? It is, I think. I swear it is. I was surprised by that, but yes, someone made a Battlescribe thingy for Rain in Hell. At what point does saving bits become hoarding? What do you do to organize yours? You ever seen those big clear plastic, like it's only about maybe, I don't know, a couple, 2 inches to 3 inches thick. They're used in crafts a lot, like especially if you're into beads and all kinds of stuff like that. Sometimes you use them for tackle box, like put your lures and sinkers and junk in different. It's got the little, you know, those things. That's what I use for my bits. Afternoon from sunny Ireland. Well, how you doing? Let's see here. So I'm having some issues painting flesh tones and faces on a D&D mini. I usually paint Battletech. What do you do to paint these? Do you use optics? For me, faces, I generally go with whatever, like the darkest flesh tone that I want in the deepest recesses of the face is my base. And then I will, well, actually, it's not true. I'll try to actually go closer to mid. So like here, you're looking at my face, right? So the lightest color is over here. whereas the darkest is probably like in here in the crease or behind my nose or over on this side. So I would pick something that's a little bit more the middle color of my face. So maybe I would pick this color here. Boom. I'd paint the face. Just there you go. Done. Let that dry. Then throw some sort of flesh colored wash over it so it gets into the crevices and all that kind of stuff. And then I would go back and highlight with a color that's more this color, a little bit lighter highlight. And then I would do a little bit like top of the nose, top of up here, maybe the brow, depending on what they look like. Maybe even sometimes this lip that sticks out, you know, here, just a little touch right there, or on the chin if I'm not wearing, you know, don't have a beard. And then I just don't paint eyes. If I really want to get fancy, I'll throw a little extra wash into the eye sockets to make it kind of darker and a little bit more sunk in, but I just don't paint eyes. So that's the way I generally do it. I don't spend tons of time on faces, honestly. My Kill Team 1 book still works. 2.0 only stunted my enthusiasm for the game. Yeah, I can understand that. Metallic paints, bad idea for wet palette. They always seem to separate on me. They will separate. All paints will separate for the most part, but metallics will separate generally a bit faster. I still put them on my wet palette. It's fine. At least that's the way I do it. Some guy on eBay is selling GW paints transferred to dropper bottles for like 70 cents more than stock paints. I mean, the work is that you don't have to do it. I'm sure there's people out there who are buying it. You know. Black Magic Craft is a good video on oil washes. Makes sense, sure. Wapple is amazing and fast with oil, but he's a mini genius. Great the last 2 streams. Oh yeah, no, James Wapple's awesome. So if you want to find somebody who can give you good insight into using oils, I mean, he's just using straight oils, but he's also using oil washes and stuff like that too. I would follow James Wapple on Twitch, and then you could he's very good at that stuff. Now, he very frequently streams very late at night, so it depends on where you live and what your sleep schedule's like. But yeah, he's very good. Let's see here. Battle Companies is a supplement by GW. It uses groups of 6 to 12 or so models. The only downside is you need the core rules manual to use it. Would highly recommend. I think I have the core rules, like Lord of the Rings book. I picked it up, I think in 2019 when it came out. I was at Nova Open and the GW booth there like sold it on Saturday or whatever, and I picked it up there. So I already have that book, but I should take a look at that Battle Companies thing. I think me and my buddy have played 2 games, 1 Octarius, 1 Compendium team so far, and it's a 50-50 split on which one won. Commando versus Death Guard Commandos won, Skitaria Rangers versus Death Corps of Krieg Rangers won. What I meant was you can buy the Corvus Cabal, for instance, Warcry box, and it has the cards with all the rules for Corvus Cabal on it versus buying a Kill Team box and just getting the models. Sure. But if you want to use regular Age of Sigmar models instead of using the Corvus Cabal, like, you know, one of the regular Warcry things, then you can't, like, they don't come with those cards. Honestly, I prefer the Age of Sigmar models to, that's not true. I don't know. All my warbands so far are all regular Age of Sigmar models. I have one warband that I started to build, the Corvus Cabal specifically, and then I put the wrong base on one of the guys, and he's got tiny little bird legs, and it's hard to get the base off, and then I just sort of set them aside, and I haven't done anything with them. I've played against several of the standard model like groups, like Dark Oath Savagers, who were in the Red Harvest box. That's what Sam's been running lately. So I've played against them, and they're cool. But I don't know, for some reason I just like the regular Age of Sigmar ones a little bit better. And then then the cards don't. Then you don't have the cards. The other thing too is that the cards. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of cards in general on that kind of stuff, but that's just me. I really want Stargrave to add vehicles and mechs. Well, that's a different game then, I guess, at that point, honestly, at least in my opinion. because it doesn't, like, vehicles and mechs, then it's no longer really skirmish too much. Like if there's just a vehicle, maybe. Even then, still, I don't know. I got all the digital Forbidden Psalm Kickstarter level on the recent campaign. Might just play that after Oculus Spear, that or 5 parsecs from home. Nice. Yeah, I did I think I'll get the PDFs as well, but then I also wanted to get the physical books, just to kind of help support the artist a bit more, because I really like the stuff that he's been doing. So I did that too. Axe and Axe says, I can't wait to get the Forbidden Psalm Last War PDF in my hands. Yep, same here. Haunted Tanks, you say? Indeed. Yes, I actually went... Gaddis Gaming, Lee Gaddis. He's a friend of mine and has a, he makes Shattered Crown and Fallen or Empire's Fall. And, but yeah, Gaddis Gaming, you can look them up. I bought 2 tanks from him, 2 World War I tanks that I'm going to use in Last War. I've got an A7V, which is that big, weird, boxy German tank from World War I. And then the Renault, or is it Renault? I think it's Renault. It's French. A Renault FT, which is also very, very early, like World War I tank. And yeah, so I'm going to use both. I'm going to model both of those up, and that's going to be fun. Greetings from Brazil. Just got into painting hobby thanks to my girlfriend, who got me a box of Skitarii Rangers, and having a great time. Thank you for all the tips and tricks that you give us. Well, absolutely, Bernardo. I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying it. I've been obsessively watching World War I tank videos because of the Last War. Nice. I'm super excited for Silver Bayonet. Finally, a way to combine my loves for wargaming and Jane Austen. See, there you go. That's fun. Ideneth used something called Ether Sea. It's kind of like magic air water. It lets the fish fly around also. I kind of figured it was some sort of stuff like that. They're still wet elves. They should have been fishmen, honestly. When they first announced the Ideneth Deepkin, I'm like, oh my god, they're going to make fishmen with big bulgy eyes and webbed fingers and the whole deal. It's going to be awesome, and they're going to be scaly. And then they were just wet elves. And I was like, whatever, dude. Let's see here. Do many minis have beards? I mean, dwarves and other stuff. Yeah, sometimes they do. I've noticed that sometimes I don't see your Friday videos unless I go directly to your channel. I mean, that's the algorithm probably. That's if you're subscribed, which if any of you are watching and you're not subscribed, you could click subscribe. You can click like if you wanted to too, if you like what that's fine too. I appreciate that. But the subscribe thing, and then there's a little bell if you want to do that. But yeah, there's all that kind of stuff. But generally, even if you subscribe to something, sometimes just YouTube doesn't exactly show it to you right away. I always go look at my subscribed page, and then it does generally show you all the stuff that you're subscribed to and what the most recent videos from each of those channels are and stuff like that. But in your normal, just like when you come to YouTube, it may not show you everything right off the bat because it needs to show you other junk that you don't care about. But that's the way algorithms work. Do you still buy physical hobby-related magazines? No. I generally go with PDFs because then they're, well, I can carry a whole bunch of them on my iPad at once. Some of the magazines that I like don't even come in a physical form anymore. Like 28 magazine it's only digital. So that is that. There's another magazine that I like called Weird Science, which they do make physical copies of, but I've just only ever bought the PDFs just because they're over in England and then it's a shipping thing. And I just prefer to, I like reading on my PDF or I like reading on my iPad just fine. It works. But and the thing is, then you got to figure out what to do with these magazines. Like I can't tell you how many White Dwarfs I've got for no good reason. And they're just around, and I'm like, I got to put them someplace, I guess. Have you ever played Kobolds and Cobblestones by Osprey? It's a card-based fantasy gang brawler skirmish. No, I have not. That does not sound familiar to me at all. Interesting, though. I'm glad that they do that stuff, though. This might just be because I recently studied political philosophy, but I'd find a game based around philosophers really interesting. Could have philosophers represent characters or leaders. It doesn't sound like a war game to me. It sounds more like a board game. I mean, there's probably board games out there that are like that. But as far as miniature war game, I don't know. That's an interesting concept. One of the best pieces of advice I've gleaned from you: don't paint the eyes. Relieves so much pressure, and to be honest, the minis always look great that way. I think so. But yeah, Renault was the first tank with a rotating turret. Yeah, that FT had that. Yep, yep. Making some of my own pipe terrain from PVC pipes. I found what I have got myself into. Yeah, it's always a thing. Uncle Adam's love of Fishman always makes me think of the movie Cabin in the Woods. I like that movie so much. How did you discover or enter the wargaming scene? What was your first tabletop wargame? Well, I mean, in middle school, I played BattleTech a bit with a friend of mine. His mom and my mom were friends, and so we kind of became friends. And he had like the BattleTech starter box at the time, and this is mid 80s, I think. And it didn't even come with models. It came with little cardboard standees, like there's a little plastic clip on the bottom, and you'd put this like cardboard rectangle in there, and you'd see like a, I don't know, Mad Cat or whatever, but you see the back side of it and the front side of it, you know, that kind of stuff. And you played on a hex grid and all that stuff, and you filled in all the tiny little circles and stuff. And in middle school, we thought that was a lot of fun. And then I didn't really play any kind of tabletop stuff until college again. And then my good friend Peter introduced me to first edition Space Hulk. And that's where I first learned about Terminators and Space Marines and Tyranids and the Emperor and blah, 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 and all that junk. And so, yeah, that was kind of where I first started. And which is why I made a video years and years ago about how I think it's kind of dumb that they don't keep Space Hulk constantly in production. It should always be in stock. It is an amazing starter experience for people. And the fact that they don't, I don't understand it. But we'll see. I guess it's probably due again. Magazines that come with a sprue of minis are always hard to resist. See, but then if you don't really want the sprue of minis, then you're like, oh, great, now I got to figure out what to do with that. That's the only issue, at least that I see. Is Adam a long lost descendant to the folks of Innsmouth? I don't think so. I got no webbing going on or anything like that. My eyes are relatively the normal size, as far as you know. But yeah, Dragon Dice is a nice army game. Even better, it uses purely dice. I think I've seen that before. The dice are your units. You put together different army compositions to make up 2 battlefields. Yeah, I think I have seen that. I still like miniatures enough that I don't like want to replace my miniatures with dice. In my mind, that becomes more of a board game almost, even though you're still kind of using, you know, war gamey kind of strategy and tactics as far as like, you know, positionality, which I think is a word I may have made up, but maybe not. Line of sight, range, stuff like that. Now that I'm starting to travel again, I'd love to have Game 4 back up and running. It's so handy for visiting new cities. Well, we are slowly working on it. We are going to the Gamma trade show in Reno, Nevada. Gamma is the Game Manufacturers Association. We're going to that trade show, not this next week, but the week after. I'll be there from Monday through Friday. And so one of the things we're doing while we're there is talking to people about Game 4 and talking to some publishers and talking to some, you know, game manufacturers. And we'll be talking to stores too, but it's mostly that we're going to be doing more talking to game publishers and things like that. The game stores themselves, we tried to focus on more in the last version of it. And we did not get, there were some game stores that were like, this is awesome, I'm really interested. And there were a lot of stores that are like, yeah, but I got Facebook, why do I care? And we would tell them why they should care. Because, you know, your store may have 1,000 likes on Facebook, but when you post at a Magic event, 80 people see it, unless you pay $30 for 300 people to see it of the 1,000 people who like your page. And we don't use that kind of algorithmic shenanigans. Anyway. But yeah, so honestly, feedback from stores was always kind of like, you know, and so we will focus a little bit more on the publishers and things like that, and obviously the users as well. And the stores can hop on board if they're interested or don't, you know, that's fine. The store finder, though, we're still going to relaunch. That's going to be one of the early we're making it a bit more modular this time, so we're going to not release the entire app all at once. We're going to be kind of releasing it in chunks a little bit, but it looks like Looking for Players and Store Finder are probably the two things that we're going to kind of lead with. We just did a survey, actually. If you listen to the Game 4 podcast, there's a link in the most recent episode, which you can find on YouTube, here on YouTube if you want to, Game 4 podcast. Most recent episode had in the description had a link to a survey, and you can fill out a survey about Game 4 and stuff like that, which has helped us out a bunch. So anyway, that's the whole thing, is we're working on trying to get that figured out. The other reason we're going to Reno, though, also is because we've been doing more work for game companies. We've been doing web design stuff for Renegade Games, which is a big board game manufacturer. If you've used the custom tray creator at Battle Foam in the last couple of years, that's our work. We also, what else did we do? Oh, there's a game that came out from a company called The Op, which is it's based off the Cuphead video game. It's called the Cuphead Fast Rolling Dice Game, and we made a companion app. They contracted us to make a companion app on your phone that has the timer that you need in the fast rolling dice game, and at the end you can do all the scoring a lot easier than doing the math or whatever. And it's Cuphead themed. It's got music and sound effects and stuff like that and whatever and everything. So we're also going to Reno to do more of that, talk to more companies about that kind of stuff as well. So there's that. I was going to read a Black Library book for the first time for the Age of Sigmar universe and was wondering if anyone had any suggestions for physical books. I like Grand Alliance Death and Nagash. I don't think I've read any of that stuff. I mean, I've read Black Library stuff, but none of the Age of Sigmar stuff. No Innsmouth look unless you have a really good filter. Could be a good filter, you don't know. Let's see here. Space Hulk and the like are in-between games, in-between editions of their core games. It's a shame they don't support it. Yeah, I mean, so I'm just finishing up Skaven on Twitch right now. My second Skaven warband. I'm working on the Stormfiend. He's the last model in that warband. Once I get done with that, I'm then going to do Khorne Bloodbound, also for Warcry. I've got, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 models or something like that. It's a good sized roster or whatever. So I'm going to be painting those folks also on Twitch. If you're interested, you want to watch me on Twitch, I'm on Twitch Monday nights at 7 p.m. Central and Fridays at 10 a.m. Central. I go for 3 hours on each of those. And I do those twice a week. Like I said, Monday nights, Friday mornings. Anyway, after I get done with Khorne, I am going to go back and, for the first time, finally, paint my 3rd edition Space Hulk. That came out in 2009. So it's the new models, right? Because there was a 1st edition Space Hulk, which is what I originally learned Space Hulk on. There was 2nd edition Space Hulk, which I think used the same models, but maybe didn't. I don't know. And then there was 3rd edition Space Hulk. And then there was another edition, which some people call 4th. Some people call it 3.5, because it's only a slight difference, kind of. I don't have that version. I have the original, 3rd edition version, but it's got the cool new models and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I'm going to paint that up on Twitch. That probably won't start till spring, late springish, maybe. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's the current plan, is that, and then that'll be fun. And then maybe once I get it all done, then maybe, I don't know, maybe Sam and I'll do some battle reports. Hopefully I'll have the studio move back to the basement and we'll do some battle reports, maybe even some live stream battle reports down in the basement. Might be fun. Do you still have your first miniature? What was it? Yeah, I do. I have, it's a Battletech Atlas. And I have it, if you come watch me on Twitch, it's on my hobby desk. I keep it there just so I can look at it and go, oh yeah, look at that. That's how I started. So if you come watch me on Twitch and say, hey, can I see your first miniature? And I can show it to you because it'll be right there. It's right there on my hobby table. I think it's important to keep your first miniature and keep it like close by so you can go back later, years later, and compare and go, oh, well, at least I'm not doing that anymore, So you got that going for you. Please put in a feature where at conventions you can do looking for players while at the convention. Oh, yeah, we've talked about that possibility as well. We were going to add that into like convention. Yeah, we've kicked around that idea as well. If you add the ability to track what games are being played at what LGS, then I can see that being a huge boon. I mean, the only way to track that stuff is for the players to actually like say, hey, it's kind of like when you see those people who were like check in at a restaurant, you're like, some friends of yours on Facebook, they're like, oh, we're so-and-so, we're watching this movie, or so-and-so are doing this at this, restaurant or whatever. I never think to bother doing that ever on Facebook. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. We've talked about figuring out kind of a way to geofence. So like if you say I'm going to this event at this store, and then during the time that the event is supposed to happen, we can tell that you have the app in the store, then we can at least say that, not so much tell people you're there, because that's a privacy concern and we're real big on privacy, but at least then we could take that information and say, this event to the publishers, this event happened at this store and there were 7 people there. We were not going to tell them who they are. We're not going to give them any emails. That's the thing too, is we're also, the downside is in the past when we've talked to publishers are always like, but what information can you give us about the people who are using your app? And what stuff are you tracking? And we're like, well, we track their email address and that's about it. We don't take any other data. We don't do any of that stuff. We're not trying to sell data to people. We don't do any kind of stuff like that. We don't need to know your real name. We don't need to know your address, any of that kind of jazz. If you want to put some of that information in there, fine, but we're not selling it to anybody and we're not really using it. Like, we know roughly IP wise where you kind of are, and that's only vaguely useful to us as well. It's useful in that when you are doing a search and you want to see events near you, that's how we show you. But you could also just completely fake it and say, instead of using location services, I want to use this postal code. So you could, and the benefit to that too is that sometimes you're going to travel in a week and you're going to be at some other place. So you could type in that postal code to find out what's going on there versus only ever checking around you. So yeah, we're real big into privacy and we don't want to share anyone's information with anybody ever. And so, that's also kind of a bit of a hill to climb with publishers, because they always want to know, well, yeah, but what can you tell us about the people who are using your app? And we're like, nothing, frankly, because we don't track it. And if we did track it, we wouldn't give it to you anyway. So sorry. We finished the Orc Commandos on a Friday. Yeah, I don't know, maybe. Our group is getting back into Battletech Alpha Strike now. The Kickstarter got us back into it. Nice. I still have all the actual lead stuff I started on back in the late 70s. So my first miniature might be in that box. A lot of Rel Partha and other weird manufacturers. I like weird manufacturers. I mean, that's basically what now, STLs are, because you've got all these crazy ideas from people who don't necessarily have to concern themselves as much with the bottom line. When you're looking at, I want to make this miniature, and I have to make a metal mold so that it can be injection molded plastic. I have to sell a lot to be able to get my money back so I'm not losing money. Then you make a specific kind of miniature. When you're like, I'm going to make a cool STL and sell it for $3 and, then you can make some crazy weird crap. So that's fun. And I enjoy that. Game tracking can be handy for folks looking to see if a game type is being played locally. I mean, that's also kind of what looking for players is on Game 4. That whole concept. If you're looking for people to play with, then it's kind of like like we've said in a bunch of times in the past, it's like that. It's like that bulletin board that's at the back of the game store frequently, where people put 3x5 cards and Post-it notes up on there about how they're looking for, hey, our D&D group needs a 5th, text Larry at this number and let him know, and that kind of stuff. Looking for players is basically that, but digitally. And, it's according to the survey, it's one of the things that people like the most about the app. So we want to make sure to bring that back as soon as possible. In the old app, I could post that I would be playing a game at the LGS, not that I had played that game. That's true. It's true. Nose is itchy all of a sudden. Just make up the data. Tell them you have a large following in North Korea. Oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. Just wanted to give you a shout out. Always listen to you when I'm outside walking my dogs. Keep up the great work. Now I have to work. Catch you next time. Absolutely, Martin. It's nearly impossible to start Alpha Strike in Ireland. The book is nowhere to be got. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And I know that. So me and Vince, we're a small company. We're just two guys. The benefit, I think, to the way that we're doing it at least for us, is making games, is that the book is a PDF, which I'm sure there's probably a PDF you could buy of Alpha Strike. I would be amazed if they don't sell a PDF of that book themselves. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I'm assuming they do. If they don't, there might be some sort of reason. Maybe it's licensing, who knows. And I know that not everybody likes PDFs as well. I get that as well. So all that being said, we're selling PDFs, but we're also selling print-on-demand books. Now, print-on-demand books don't have as good of a profit margin, admittedly. You make more money by making a print run of a thing and then, at an actual printing company and then making X amount of them, 10,000 of them, and then selling them and shipping them all over the world and going through all that crap. And in theory, you make more per unit as the publisher. But Vince and I already have 2 other jobs besides this. Both of us have our day jobs. Both of us have a YouTube channel. And so we look at this print-on-demand thing working through One Bookshelf is the name of the overall company, but Wargame Vault is underneath them, Drive-Thru RPG is underneath them, all the other different, affiliate websites. And that print-on-demand thing means that, A, we never have to worry about warehousing, distribution, shipping, any of that stuff, and it's never out of print. So I understand that, yeah, you're a big company, Catalyst or whatever, and you want to do this, but the fact that so many people are constantly like, you guys don't ever make enough product, you either need to start making more product or just start expecting that people aren't going to play your game because they can't ever get it. So it's, I know it's a weird position that they're probably in, because if they make too much, then they could be sitting on too much. If they don't make enough, then they can't sell it. It's hard to track that stuff, but I guess the long story short is, if you are thinking about getting into game design, there's great ways you can do it and not have all the headaches that the big companies have. And that's by going through print on demand and PDF, and just, it's just way easier. We never used to have that kind of opportunity, 10 years ago, 10 years ago we did, but 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if you wanted to be a publisher, or if you wanted to make a game, you probably either had to talk to some other big publisher or figure out how to actually produce it, make a bunch of them, keep them in your garage, hopefully get distributors to pick them up, all that jazz. Now it's not done that way anymore. So, hey Zambies, how you doing? Alpha Strike's Commander is available online PDF. That's what I would assume, yeah. They'd be dumb not to, in my opinion, but I understand that a lot of people don't like PDFs. I like PDFs, but in some situations I like the books too, but I'm fine with using a PDF in many situations. The PDFs are searchable, which is also nice. Let's see here. How is Jade today? I don't know who Jade is. Oh, is Jade? Oh, I think Jade is maybe Zambi's dog. I think that's what. Yep. Had a fantastic 40K game yesterday. 1,000 points of orcs versus UMs. UMs. I don't know what UMs are. Orcs versus UMs. That's cool though. I'm glad you had fun with that. What are the UMs? I can't think of what UMs are. Alpha Strike Commander's edition from Catalyst is affordable and great, and they auto-update it with email notifications and direct download links when new printings are available. I mean, yeah, that's the other big benefit of PDF, too. I like that as well. They do the same thing. All that same stuff happens with Wargame Vault and all that kind of jazz. Have you tried out the newest version of Infinity? They have an N4, edition 4, but also an introductory version called Code 1, which minimizes all the rules for faster games and for beginners. I haven't, no. I know some folks that play, and I haven't tried the new version at all, but at least with the 3rd edition, I've had a couple of different demos. One of them, Sam was teaching me how to play, and I've just... Oh, Ultramarines. UM Ultramarines. Gotcha. Yeah, I've just never, it's just never, for something about the rule set has just never struck me. It just seems, at least in my mind, it just seems weird. Like there's just weird things going on there. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what it's all about. And the miniatures have never been super, like they're better now because they're fewer parts. But they've never also, like that aesthetic has never quite struck me either. So you can get the Alpha Strike on PDF on Drive-Thru RPG. So yeah, I kind of figured that too. Ultramarines, gotcha. Yes. They might have that BattleTech box and big restock in my FLGS, but I've stayed away to save money. I can understand that. Did I miss the 5-year schedule talk? Hard splitting my attention. I mean, no, as it turns out, you didn't. Okay, so this is the general idea that I kind of had recently. So everything has been on a 3-year schedule for a while now from Games Workshop. 40K is on a 3-year schedule. Age of Sigmar is on a 3-year schedule. Kill Team obviously was on a 3-year schedule. And like I said, I have a very strong suspicion that Warcry will be on a 3-year schedule, which is to say this summer we'll get a new version of Warcry, which I don't want. I like the old version. It's just fine. We don't need to go forward. Sam and I have a bet. He bet me $5 that they won't do it. But I hope I lose that bet. I really do. But the only reason that I think that they might extend that one out a little bit is just because of the global shipping shenanigans and all that jazz. But we will see. But what I had a thought just recently is that next summer 2023, will be 10th edition 40K already, because 3 years. And that just seems too soon in my mind. Now, part of the reason they're doing this obviously is a revenue stream thing, because the more that they can get you to buy more books, it's just better for them overall. But you'll notice this last summer that they came out with Kill Team 2021, and they also came out with 3rd edition Age of Sigmar the same summer, which seems kind of dumb a little bit. I mean, admittedly, there's certainly some overlap, but it's very small overlap between the people who play Age of Sigmar and the people who play Kill Team. So at least one's sci-fi, one's fantasy, and they dropped them to the same summer. If it would have been like Warcry and Age of Sigmar the same summer, that would have been weird, because there'd be probably a good deal more overlap there. So that's just, so what it got me thinking, what about a 5-year schedule? Because then you could have the summer of 40K, and then next summer could be the summer of Warcry, and then the next summer could be the summer of Kill Team, and then the next summer could be the summer of Age of Sigmar. And then on that 5th summer, then maybe it's the summer of, I don't know, maybe they make a new game. Maybe it's Adeptus Big Monster Stompius, or Adeptus Fly Roundicus, like any of the, they could mix a bunch of those together. That could be Specialist Summer, I don't know, Blood Bowl. They could move a bunch of junk in there that's kind of smaller. Maybe that's the year every 5 years they come out with a new version of Space Hulk. So there's all that possibility. I think that would be great. And then that way it would be 5 years in between games, which would be better, I think. But they would still be able to release, Kill Team annuals, chapter approved, generals handbooks, Tome of Champions, all that junk in between there every year. Still be making money that way. 40K would probably still be doing seasons where you'd be getting 2 new sets of weird stuff every year. The only reason they wouldn't do this is because it would make them less money, most likely. But I think that they may over time start to find that people are tired of the 3-year schedule, and that will also make them less money when people stop buying stuff. So my thought was just, and I know that everyone from Games Workshop is completely glued to this show every single weekend, or every other weekend. So I'm sure they're all listening, but a 5-year schedule makes more sense to me. I think it would be better on the overall people playing the game, the audience. And it would also allow you to have a bigger focus every summer on the new big release, as opposed to like what we had last summer where we had 2 big releases, I don't know. That was my thought. I think that that's what they should do, is have that kind of cycle. They've got the 4 big games, and then the 5th summer is just a catch-all of all the weird little things that they do, or whatever. And like I said, every 5th year they should come out with a new version of Space Hulk, because then that way, it doesn't have to be a new version. And they would probably tweak it and whatever, but just a re-release, anything, just so that it's not, I mean, it's been a long time since Space Hulk's been out, and who knows when it's going to come back again. And it's a good game to get people into the hobby. So, there's that too. Anyway, that's the crux of my the subject for today's video to some degree. My girlfriend who doesn't play just keeps yelling, Ultramarines. I see, because Ultramarines is one word, which is why UM doesn't make any sense to me. Like, Ultramarines is a single word, I'm pretty sure. So that's why, like, it's when people refer to this channel and they call it TTM. It's just TM, because tabletop is one word. So that's just my own weird way that my brain works. Underwater Millennials. Ooh. Let's see here. Not sure we really talked about a 5-year deal. Well, there we did. Now I got it out of the way. Code 1 was okay. The core game. Oh, Code 1, Code 1 for some reason made me think of. I was thinking of Code Red. Mountain Dew Code Red. I'm like, I don't know that this is soda talk here, but I get you. Yeah, Code 1 is the game from Infinity. Miniatures, especially the older ones, are a nightmare. Yeah, I put together an Infinity miniature like 10 years ago. He was maybe at least a dozen parts, if not more. And he was all metal, and that sucked. I nearly died. Heading out to the UK Games Expo in June, and it turns out that Warhammer World is only an hour away from the event. Oh, that's nice. Uh-oh. I think I hear somebody. I want the old 6-year schedule back. It was perfect for everyone but the tournament players. Well, yeah. But C5 is maybe a compromise. We'll see. I would love to see heat maps of what indie games are popular. You and me both. That would be great. I can't think of a great way to figure that out other than trying to crowdsource it in some fashion. But yeah, who's to say? Just hang. Nick was out doing stuff and now is back. So, let's see here. 6-year schedule. Battletech box isn't a bad price. Clan Invasion box is also not a horrible price. I also have a 3D printer for my mechs, but I like a real rule book, so I had to grab that. Gotcha. What are the problems with the current Warcry that they would need to fix? No idea. That's the trick. I don't know that there's huge. I know that there's some people out there who don't like some stuff here and there, more for tournament style play. But honestly, that's what Toma Champions is for. That stuff should be fixed in there. That's why they do that. If they're going to be cranking out Toma Champions all the time, but then also changing the game every 3 years, then it's just too much. So I don't really see there being a big problem. I think that they could Caradon Overlords, if you use the right guns, are totally gross, and so you shouldn't do that. And they should fix that in some fashion if they can. But beyond that, I mean, there's not a huge problem in my mind. Everyone's got a little thing where I think they should tweak this, I think they should tweak that. That's great. But again, those tweaks should be done in the Toma Champions as opposed to coming out with another new edition already, especially because if they don't change much, then people are going to go, why'd you make a new edition? But if they change a bunch, people are going to get angry, and then other people will not get angry. And it's just, I don't know. If they make a new Warcry, I'll not be getting it anyway. Well, there you go. What's the state of Kill Team in your time or region? Here, people really dislike the compendium thing and are waiting for a book with all the proper rules. I don't know anybody who plays it around here by me, as it turns out. I don't know anybody who plays Kill Team around here. Yeah, not that I've seen. Have you tried any of the newer, more flexible 3D printer resins? I haven't. I haven't 3D printed anything yet. I still own I own a 3D printer, but I have not 3D. It's not set up. If you're a big Seinfeld fan, you might want it to be a 6-year cycle so that you can get in the Summer of George. I've never liked Seinfeld, really. I want that Battletech box, and then I'm done. But at this point, I'm so broke I can barely afford to pay attention. Well, there you go. I hope there isn't a new Warcry yet. Yeah, I know what you mean, Zambies. I know you just kind of started playing. At 5 years, you might not have had to rush the compendium. Also a good point. Yep, you're not wrong. What do you think are some of the best non-games workshop miniatures? What do you think are some of the best non-games? I don't know if there's but the best non-games workshop miniatures. Lately, I've been a big fan of miniatures from Anvil Industry, which is a UK company, and they make their stuff mostly in resin. They also have a STL kind of division as well called Digital Anvil, I think. I was actually building some of their miniatures yesterday for a project, and yeah, I've used their stuff for Zona Alpha, and I've got some cool sci-fi ones. I bought a lot of different heads from them as well, and I like to use their stuff. But otherwise, I've been also getting just a lot of weird random 3D printed stuff off of Etsy and working on that stuff too, which I dig quite a bit. So Personally, I agree the 3-year turnover is too fast. I feel GW should get to a point where they let the game rest for a bit and final tweaks and focus on something else for a bit. Yeah, I agree. I feel like Terminators are squatted in GW's eyes, so they'd never get a new board game. Well, but they still sell the Terminators, Lord knows. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think they should release their exclusive boxed games less exclusively. It's a bummer to have to import it. Boxed games summer is best summer. I don't understand the concept of like we make these games that you can only buy at Barnes and Noble. Like who's got a Barnes and Noble anymore? I thought they had gone out of business. There were some certain games you could also only get at Target, which I get Target. They're a big manufacturer, department store or whatever. But yeah, that's odd. That was surprising to me. Like Blitz Bowl is one of them, which is kind of like a bit of a stripped down version of Blood Bowl, but still very, very fun. But yeah, from what I can tell, you can only get that at Barnes & Noble, which is weird. I don't know what kind of, I hope Barnes & Noble paid them a bunch of money. I don't know how that works. Battlefleet Gothic, the thought of having to buy another Adeptus Sororitas Codex in a year or so is ridiculous. Yeah. Every time you say, I don't know why Games Workshop does blank, all I think of is Mr. Krabs shouting, money. Well, it's true. I mean, you're not wrong. I'm a terrible capitalist, so there's that. That's why I'm sometimes quite flummoxed by the things that they do. But yeah, you're not wrong. It's because of money. The thing is that I just think that at some point that will start to dry up to some degree. When people get angry enough at a company because of their practices, eventually then you'll start to see that line go down, which, they don't like to see. Summer of Adeptus Flyroundicus sounds like the last time the festival, 3 tours back to back. All right, yeah, that makes sense. Favorite indie game is currently Conquest: Last Argument of Kings. Their models are definitely getting better, and I have always liked the amount of work they put into the game, and like all of the everything looks great, and the models are even better now because the earliest models from them were very soft, and I don't mean soft like they were bendy, but just like the details weren't sharp, right? But their newer stuff, especially the stuff I saw at Gen Con this past summer, was nice and sharp. So they're definitely moving in that direction, which is great. My only issue with it, and it's not like they're bad or anything like that, it's just not my cup of tea, is that it's generally a rank and flank style game. Like I just don't like big rank and flank style games. Now I know that they also have, what the heck is it called? First Blood is their skirmish version game, but in my mind, it's not really skirmish. You're still moving the models around separately, but there's also still staying in squads. Honestly, I feel like First Blood is more like Age of Sigmar because you do have a decent amount of models. You have some big models that are singular by themselves, but you're still moving them in squads. What I want out of a skirmish game is basically everybody moves separately. You may have a type of unit that does move in squads because they're more of a swarm unit. You have that in one-page rules. Grimdark Firefight is the name of the game, which is kind of their version of Kill Team. It has the majority of the models are running around by themselves, but there are some types of models that might move in groups where they have to stay in coherence and stuff like that, and that's fine. But yeah, that's my only issue with Conquest. Like I said, the models are definitely getting better and all that stuff, and their books and everything have always looked very cool. So. Let's see here. What's the worst model you ever tried to build or paint? The one that made you curse because it was a pain. Definitely the Chaos Lord on Karkadrak. I did not finish building that model, and then I went onto eBay and I bought one that was built that somebody just didn't paint. Because anytime you find a model that you don't want to build, you can probably find somebody on eBay who built it and then didn't paint it, and then you can just buy it built and then scrape the mold lines because they probably didn't scrape the mold lines, and then you can start painting from on top of that. That's what I did with that model. That model only is available, I think, in the Start Collecting box for Slaves to Darkness. I think that's it, but it might be someplace available too. But that's where I got one from, was the Start Collecting box for Slaves to Darkness. Is that Nick's mouth or a mustache? Oh, that's his mouth. When will we see a Nick shirt from Uncle Adam World Enterprises? Soon. It's part of the next wave of shirts that I'm working on, and I just got the last piece of artwork for the next wave from the artist that I contracted. Was it early? It was earlier this week. Yeah, like less than 7 days ago. Tuesday or Wednesday is when I got the last piece of artwork, and I have to do a bunch of stuff to it and whatnot and all that jazz and everything. But yeah, we're getting there. We're definitely getting there. There will be a whole new merch store. I'm moving away from Teespring, which has changed their name just to Spring. Partially because they don't have enough facilities around the world for shipping, and I don't like that. Secondly, because they've announced that they want to get into NFTs, and I really don't like that. So I'm moving to a different company altogether called Fourth Wall, who works with Printful and several other companies as well, and gives just more choice and more places to print from. So if you're living over in, let's say, Australia, you don't have to get a shirt printed in the UK or the US. You can get a shirt printed in Australia, and then shipping is way easier and all that kind of stuff. So. Let's see here. We've got a pretty good kill team scene in Brookfield. Nice. Trying to get kill team launched in my area as the game grew. It's been real difficult. I mean, that's the thing, is that someone mentioned the idea of a heat map before for games. That'd be astounding. It'd be so useful and nice to see. It's super hard to track though. But yeah, that would be very, very cool. Underwater Millennials sounds like a new faction for Idneth Deepkin. Yeah, a little bit. 52 Miniatures, how you doing? Squidmar, how you doing? Finally set my resin printer up after it's been sitting in a box for over 6 months. I don't know what I was waiting for. Super easy to set up and printing all sorts of things. Real fun. For me, the issue is still ventilation because I want to put it in the basement. And also heat. My basement is very cold in the winter. So, it hovers between 57 and 61 Fahrenheit, which I don't know what that means in other people's temperatures, unfortunately, but it's chilly. And so from what I understand, it's best if you're printing in resin if the room temperature's around 75-ish. So, one thing I want to do is get like a grow tent, for orchids, and set that up and put the thing inside there and put like a small, not like a crazy heater that'll melt things, but like a heater that'll just raise it up to about 75 in there. So that'll help. And then also be able to ventilate it and blow it outside the house, which means that as it gets a little bit warmer outside, I will drill a hole in my house, which is scary. I don't really want to drill a hole in my house, but there's not other good option. We've gone through this a bunch before on the show about, basement window and this and that and the other thing. There's none of that in my weird little Harry Potter room underneath the basement stairs where I do my airbrushing and soon also my 3D printing. But when I get that set up, then I want to be able to 3D print all the things, just because I've been buying STLs and like putting them into a folder and going, I'm going to totally print that. It's going to be fun to paint. I'm looking forward to it, but we're not there yet. So yeah. So I don't know if anybody else... 5 years sounds like longer than it is, but I totally agree. Yeah, and like I said, I think that the 5-year cycle thing makes a lot of sense, because if they did it that way, they could be like the summer of 40K, the summer of Warcry, the summer of Age of Sigmar, the summer of Kill Team. And then that 5th summer could be, like I said, they could release a new Space Hulk every year, which would be an awesome idea. They could also do all those other weird little games, the Blood Bowl and Adeptus Flyroundicus and all that jazz, and then go back again to 40K, and that would be a 5-year schedule. I think overall, people would be happier. I think shareholders would not. So that's probably why it won't happen. But like I said, since I know that every single person who works at Games Workshop always listens to this show, I'm hoping that we can maybe make a plea and see how that works. But I'm not holding my breath. I mean, yeah, I can't hold my breath very long anyway, so it wouldn't be a good idea. Let's see here. Do you have a favorite STL designer or producer yet? I don't. No, I buy a lot of different weird stuff. Lots of Barnes and Nobles near me in North Texas. There's like one I can think of anywhere near me, and it's still a good 45 minutes away. But yeah, it's interesting. Let's see here. Someone who lives outside the United States, at least Barnes & Noble ships internationally. Oh, that's good. Target won't even let me buy something through my freight forwarder because I have a foreign credit card. That sounds mean. I've been using the same Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook for 2 40K editions, 4 Space Marine Codexes. The 3-year cycle is exhausting. Yes, it is. It very much is, yes. Warhammer Old World, can't wait. I'm a sucker for rank and file fantasy games. See, that I'm not interested in that at all, but I'm glad that they're kind of, I think it's cool that they're basically making kind of a Horus Heresy sort of, version for fantasy. You know what I mean? Like that you still got the people who dig like regular 40K, still got the people who dig regular Age of Sigmar, but then you've got the ability to go, oh, I like to do, Horus Heresy or Old World. I think that's a smart move if they do it the same way. They may not do it exactly the same way, but we'll see. Ever build any of the Marvel Crisis models? I have not yet, but I've heard that they are a pain in the butt. Specifically the ones in the starter box. I think I've been hearing that the newer models that they've been putting out in singular boxes are a bit easier, fewer parts. So that's probably for the best. Uncle Adam, I like your principles. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's important, I don't know. Heat map would require some tracking of games played in your app. You could track where the games are played, but not who is playing them. The thing about tracking, though, is that how do you track? You know what I mean? If you've got an app that does that, we thought a lot about what's the thing? Like I was saying before, I'm not the type of person who on Facebook says, oh, I'm at the movie theater to watch this movie, or oh, I'm at this restaurant to eat food. But people do, but not a lot of people do. So how do you incentivize in some fashion a way to get people to do that? How do you incentivize and go, look, let's, if you check in a bunch of times, do you get a badge? Sometimes people like badges. We implemented badges in the last version of Game 4 just before all of the troubles and everything with the pandemic. So maybe it's something like that. You check in at a bunch of different places. You check in, I'm playing this game at this store, or I'm playing this game at this person's house. We don't track the store. We don't track the house. We just track that in this town, this game was played, that kind of stuff, and then potentially be able to build some sort of heat map. And then that's beneficial for just people who are curious, all the way up to publishers who are like, oh, we should get more demo teams in this city because no one's playing our game there, or that kind of thing. There's definite benefits to that, but it is getting the crowdsourcing to actually source. You know what I mean? Like get the crowd to actually do the sourcing. You have to convince them in some fashion or something like that. I remember back in the early days of Foursquare where you could check in at like a restaurant enough until you became the mayor of the restaurant and stuff like that. That was a smart idea. And I had friends that we would constantly be going back and forth. Oh, I was the mayor, but now Bob took it or whatever. That sort of also kind of faded away. So I don't know. Drilling a hole in the house, be sure to make sure that hole isn't discovered by bees and wasps. Yeah. I would put basically make it like one of those, the dryer vent things, where it's got the flaps, and when it starts to blow, then the flaps get out of the way or something like that. Yeah, definitely the case. Do not want bees in there. Absolutely. Have to head out, but happy I had the chance to catch 10 minutes or so. Have a great continued stream. Well, thanks, Squidmar. Absolutely. Winter of Frostgrave. Ooh. Grow tents are super reflective on the inside, keep the heat well from lights and other equipment. Yeah, I don't know that would be a requirement to have a heater inside the tent. You know what I mean? But maybe. Let's see here. Just about to the end of the show. Incentives, achievements. Badges are kind of the same thing we were doing there. But yeah, I know what you mean. I would track via Untap's method with the badges ratings. Yeah, that's kind of what we were doing, actually, yeah. Oh, you've played 12 independent games. You are now an independent. Indeed, yeah. So yeah, that's something we've been thinking about as well, because we know that there'd be interest in finding that stuff out, but it's probably not a definite launch thing initially. But it is something we're thinking about for sure. So anyway, for those of you who work at Games Workshop who are listening to the show, think about the 5-year thing. If you got any questions, you can give me a call. And that'll be great. So otherwise, the rest of you, I hope you have a good couple of weeks. When we meet here again, I will be just back from the Game Manufacturers Association trade show, the Reno Expo, no, Gamma Expo in Reno, Nevada. I will get back on Friday, and then so next week, Sunday, or not next week, but 2 weeks from now, Sunday show will be still here, and everything will be fine. So yeah, we'll do that. And then the week right after that is going to be Adepticon. So there won't be any interference with the schedule here, at least for a while that I can think of. I am also going to PAX East in April, and I don't know if that's going to mess with the dates yet or not, but I'll find out. I'll look it up. So I hope you folks have a rest of your good day, rest of your good Sunday. Maybe it's already Monday, either way. And we will see you folks soon. I'll tell you folks about the trade show and all the weird stuff that I see there in Reno in the next episode. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.